Hi, I'm Max, a Career Foundry UX student from London. Today, I'm going to be showing you what I've been up to these past 5 or so weeks. As part of my first course as a Career Foundry student, I was asked to design an app with the purpose of empowering people to learn new vocabulary. Throughout the presentation, I'll run you through my user persona, user flows, wireframes, usability tests, prototype, and finally a personal reflection at the end. So here he is, Horatio. Smart, suave, and most importantly, hardworking. Horatio is 29, American, from Boston, and recently just moved to Madrid. Horatio is a strategy consultant, which basically means he works incredibly long hours and often needs to travel for work, resulting in a lot of dead time. All this whilst making a lot of money and not having a lot of time to socialize, apart from the odd weekend. What's more, he doesn't speak any Spanish, so even if he wanted to mingle with the locals, he couldn't. Horatio loves Duolingo, but hates being told his pronunciation is wrong. He'd also like to interact with other students on the app. Horatio needs a way to meet new people to practice his Spanish because he's new to Madrid and doesn't speak the language. Not only does Horatio need to practice his Spanish, but he wants to integrate into Spanish society. He wants to do so by meeting new Spanish people. Getting out there hasn't been easy for Horatio, because of work, obviously, but for cultural reasons as well. He doesn't drink, he doesn't like eating late, and he doesn't like football. Soccer, if you will. Learning Spanish will be key to making new friendships. Finding a way to do both would be the ideal. This is where Bonito comes in, a language learning app with a social media element. I believe that by building an app that allows Horatio to meet new people and practice his Spanish, he'll make new friends and gain confidence speaking the language and improve his pronunciation. So this is exactly what I set out to do. To do this, obviously one must do some research to start with, and once that is covered, basic user flows are what are needed. My process was quite discombobulated, as I think I seriously underestimated the complexity of decision making and processes during navigation. I came up with these. Yep, I know, pretty simple, way too simple. 7 linear actions. I don't think anything in life could be this simple, even making a cup of tea. Honestly, I was a bit thrown by the multiple application suggestions there were on the Career Foundry syllabus page. I tried Lucidchart and hated it. I couldn't export the image to PowerPoint properly, so I thought at that point to directly do the user flows on PowerPoint. Bad decision. Anyway, the important thing to note are the 2 tasks I chose, namely starting a new course and befriending somebody on the app. Remarkably, looking through my notebook, I didn't sketch these user flows before being told by my tutor to tweak these PowerPoint ones. So back to the drawing board I went, or to the drawing board rather, and came up with these. Okay, now we're starting to look more like user flows. My tutor recommended using FlowMap, and here are the final products. Now, for my wireframes. And just a word of warning, I went back and forth a lot on this. For large periods, I became very frustrated with simple things such as not having a rubber or a Sharpie. Coronavirus, what are you going to do? To significant ones such as the Marvel app not syncing my wireframes. Absolute nightmare. So here are some of the first wireframes. As you can see, they're in pencil, and yes, they take up the whole of the A4 page. I know what you're thinking. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Marvel uses the exact dimensions of a mobile screen, so the wireframes need to be somewhat similar in scale. Completely redundant then. Right, wireframes round 2. This time I thought it would be clever to manually draw the borders of an iPhone 7 screen. I thought, and still think, that they turned out quite well. But there was a problem. I suck at drawing straight lines, so the borders would encroach into the Marvel wireframes. No good. I remember at this point I still didn't have a rubber, so using a pencil wouldn't have made a difference. Okay, round 3. This time I thought drawing the borders in a straight line, straight continuous lines, only a centimetre apart from each other, would solve my issue. Honestly, I can't even remember at this point, but I don't think it did, and noticed that I was drawing in pencil. Must have got a rubber by then. Importantly, these were submitted and needed tweaking. Okay, I'll try to wrap things up now. These wireframes are actually the ones that got approved. My tutor said they were good, but that I just needed to complete a certain flow. I believe it was uploading a word. Right, as you can see, at this stage, I'd completely given up on borders. I would just draw and hope to God that any sketches would fit into the scale dimensions of an iPhone 7 screen. And they did, for the most part. But they looked terrible, and I didn't want to continue working in this format, producing results I wasn't happy with. So, back to the drawing board. I've lost count now, but this was a major breakthrough moment for me, because I got told by another student to simply print off iPhone wireframe templates. Duh. God, I felt stupid. I'd been eyeing up the wireframe notepad on Amazon, but it had an estimated delivery time of 3 weeks. Again, thanks to coronavirus. I would, however, urge Career Foundry to include this nugget of information in the course, as I'm sure I won't be the first person to have had similar troubles with iPhone templates and what have you. Anyway, I think this is the point where my levels of frustration reached an all-time high. The new wireframes, which I believe look pretty good, wouldn't sync to Marvel. After all that, I was stuck with the old ones I didn't like. I tried uploading them from my Mac, but the website does not have the frame feature the app does, so I was left with ugly wireframes which included the whole iPhone template. In a nutshell, they were wrong. Enough of sketching, enough of terrible borders, and enough of Marvel. My, shall we say, study buddy raved about Figma in the past and opted to use it once ditching Marvel, getting similarly frustrated as I did. I decided to do the same. There is one key difference though. She already knew how to use it. I didn't, but I figured that there was no time like the present. So here they are, my final wireframes. Cool, right? I know they've ceased to be low fidelity at this point, and that color comes later, but they're tidy and easy to navigate, which is what I wanted. Here are a few examples, including my categories page and profile page and test. This brings us to usability testing. Because of the coronavirus, my whole family are living under one roof, so finding 3 participants was not hard. I chose not to conduct tests over Skype, as I thought it would be too difficult to gauge the user's navigation and reactions. This meant that none of my users fit the target demographic of a 25 to 35-year-old young working professional abroad. But that's okay, as we just want to test the usability of the prototype, not whether it's an exciting app. Plus, I feared my friends wouldn't have taken it very seriously. I asked each participant to carry out 4 tasks, namely, enrolling onto a course, learning a new word through a flashcard, uploading a new word, finally, take the test for the current module. I just wanted to highlight 1 out of 3 of my participants, as she gave the most feedback and is the least tech savvy. Overall, the test went well, with 1 major hiccup though, which I'll get into. Right, task 1, enrolling onto a course. I didn't include all the wireframes, as this task was incredibly straightforward, but I wanted to point out how all three participants asked why they couldn't input their name. Why isn't a keyboard popping up? They simply had to press sign up. Once you finish the onboarding process and sign up process, you complete the test, you set your preferences, and inform the app of your interests. You press submit. This was not raised during testing, but I've noticed that I didn't provide a skip option. I can't remember why exactly, but I remember it got very complicated with making dozens more wireframes and overlapping and as a guest not being, being on level 4 when you should be on. It was a bit of a nightmare. So I opted not to do the guest option or skipping tests and what have you, just to make it simpler for the point of the prototype. So, task 2, learning a new word through a flashcard. Once signed up, the user is taken to the home screen. This is something I debated with myself many times over. Do I need a home screen? What value does it add? Does it detract from the overall purpose of the app? My tutor raised it as well. Ultimately, I felt it was an important feature in the social aspect of the app. Once here, the user clicks the course menu, bringing him or her to the main course page. The user proceeds by clicking flashcards. Our first flashcard, hijo, Spanish for son. My participants struggled a bit at this stage. This is because I put the hover feature on Show English Translation. This works beautifully on a laptop, but does not translate on a phone, as obviously you can't hover over icons or buttons without a mouse. This meant that the participants did not know what the word meant. Moreover, hijo is very difficult to pronounce. Without having the pronunciation coming from the phone and the sound icon, which I did have, it's very hard to get. Once added, an auto-generated note appears and the user clicks Got It. This was not flagged, but I feel the Got It button and text needs to be slightly larger, at least larger than the Not Sure button, but I could be wrong. Hijo as a word has been learnt at this point. On to word number 2, hija, as you can imagine, daughter. I only included one flashcard for flow, so at this point I asked the users to do task 3, i.e. upload a new word. They struggled though. This is because I had only added the home button. No back nor course buttons were added. Quite a big error, I know. All 3 managed to get to task 3 though. Uploading a word. Thank God. The process and flow here was very similar to task 2. Once abuela was added, grandma, was uploaded, I asked the users to undertake task 4, that is, to complete the module test. This proved to be very challenging. The same thing happened as the last task. Two out of 3 of the users could not get to the test section. They kept pressing the screen, but it brought them to the splash screen somehow. They were both confused and irritated. I got lucky as Figma brought them back to the start of the prototype. Really lucky. I won't bore you with the next task, as there were no major issues, and it went smoothly. Smoother than 2 and 3 at least. As you can see from my usability test report, 7 issues were reported. They were graded on a level between 0 to 4, 0 being I completely disagree, irrelevant, not worth even thinking about, to 4, have to fix this right away for the functionality of the app to work. Why it's not 1 to 5, I don't know, but whatever. 3 of them were serious, whilst 4 were, I feel, part of any prototype at this stage at least. As you can see, I've ranked the navigation issues very highly. I also gave the hover feature a high score, as it is imperative to know the definition or translation when learning flashcards. Tweaking the prototype, what I learned. Looking back at my prototype, I'm proud of it, but I'm really kicking myself over those simple mistakes I made. The navigation and functionality were overlooked, as I think at this point I just wanted to get the task done. I'd had enough of wireframes at that point. Can you blame me? I'll not take things for granted next time. Similarly, switching from Mac to iPhone was also going to pose challenges, as they obviously work differently on different devices. More rigorous double checking is needed next time. I regret sticking so rigidly to the script template provided by Career Foundry. I should have stressed more that it was a prototype. In my own words, perhaps I could have got the message across clearer. The participants just did not seem to get it was a prototype at a very early stage. I felt the splash screen looked great, but I'm really not so sure about all that yellow later on in the app. But I'm sure late color will come later on in the course and has more to do with UI, so I'm not too fussed about that. It's also ironic of me to call it a low fidelity prototype and not having pictures, for example, but having colorful navigation bars made by Figma. Do one or the other. I think this also contributed to the users expecting more from the prototype and also getting confused. Just to highlight the keyboard incident, for example, and participant number 3 getting confused with the test, being asked who the person was when the image wasn't there. I would definitely incorporate more user flows and tasks next time. I did not get to try out my user flow task 2, i.e. send a message to somebody. It seemed complex at the time and veered away from the project brief. So I'm kind of glad I didn't do that. Lastly, the idea of the app is to meet people to learn Spanish. This flow just has to be tested out in the future to check out the viability and to prove whether or not it does have a USB. So I took the liberty in working out what that would look like. Overall reflections. Right. I should have stuck closer to the project brief, made it a vocab and flashcards app predominantly. The whole uploading task with a language learning app got me very confused. How do you upload words in a language that you can't speak? Very confusing. But fortunately, the users actually felt it was a very good idea. I just think my life would have been made a lot easier had I read the brief more carefully and been able to design a simpler app with less features, less functions, and not getting carried away with a language app. I speak a bit of French, certainly more than Spanish, thanks to school, but I speak Italian fluently. I could have made the exercises much better, much more complex, much more fun, and made my life a lot easier. I adore Spain, and I'm doing lots of Spanish on Duolingo, and perhaps I got overexcited. I love doing the user flows, and I feel like I got quite good at them at the end, although I did only do 2. But promising signs. Wireframes. Old friend. It's been tough, but I think that's because I'm a novice. It's been a very steep learning curve, and I feel like I've learned so much over these past 5 weeks. I don't regret using Figma at all. I'm very glad I made the switch from Marvel actually. I would just have made the wireframe simpler. It might have taken me quite a lot longer, but I have the time and I like to do things thorough. I'm excited for the next project. Now, from me, a big gracias.